Hey everyone, it's a dose of Dr. Drew.
Indeed, here we are, everyone. Pile on in. Good to see you all on this lovely Friday afternoon. Hi, guys. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Cindy. I've got a little business to get to, but first I want to introduce my guest. We have none other than the great Tom Green on the line. Tom is doing daily podcasts now, just like we're doing these daily streams. Tom, welcome.
Hello, Dr. Drew. How are you holding up with all of this pandemic news, and are you okay?
I'm fine. I'm a little exhausted, and I'm a little sort of like, I'm at my limit, I'd say, emotionally, like everyone. I was talking to Bert Kreischer yesterday, and he and I both share an anxiety disorder. Bert's a little worse than mine, but we both have this thing. And we both agreed we could feel the ambient anxiety. It was to us, there was electricity in the air that was affecting us. I think maybe there's something to it. I don't know, but it certainly feels like that.
Yeah, I haven't interacted with another human being in about 48 hours in person. I'm isolated in my home and here in LA, and I've been podcasting and I've been talking to my friends on the phone, and that's been my way of keeping myself occupied. And I think that's something that I think is important, is that we all keep ourselves occupied.
Well, and I would even argue meaningfully occupied. That this little stream for me is a nice way to get out, get information, give my thoughts, interact with people, talk to people like you. We may have Bob Forrest in here tomorrow, by the way. Adam Carolla in on Sunday. Where can people see your podcast?
Steve-O.
Oh, Steve-O tomorrow?
No,
Today.
on Sunday.
On Sunday.
He just texted me.
Right. He wanted to talk to Adam. Tell me, Tom, where can we get your podcast?
It's everywhere you can hear podcasts. So it's on Spotify, it's on iTunes, it's on Google, it's on TomGreen.com. So it's called the Tom Green Podcast, which is the name I came up with for it. And just search the Tom. It seemed like a good name, Yeah. But, it's the Tom Green Podcast. So put that in quotes and search that, and then just subscribe wherever you subscribe to podcasts.
Thanks, Flying Goose, who liked me and Dr. Oz yesterday on television. I appreciate that. You can see that at fox11.com. I also want to thank our friends at Blue Mic Microphones. They have just completely changed the audio quality of what's going on here. And I know people like being, maybe those of you watching the stream may not know, but the podcast world can get very critical of the audio quality. And these headphones, you need to get these Blue Mics, Tom. I kid you not. They just changed everything for us. And bluemic.com for anybody else that wants to, BLUEMIC. They've been doing this for 25 years, and man, they know what they're doing, and I'm deeply grateful for them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you need to.
You sound good to me. I mean, you sound really good right now.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So do me a favor, Tom. Review for people your history with the Webo vision, because I lived it with you, and I don't know if everyone knows what a pioneer you were with all this.
Well, it's interesting because I'm doing this podcast from my house daily right now. Every day I'm going on and I'm taking calls and I'm talking to my friends and I'm talking to comedians, and you said you're going to call in tomorrow. I'll talk to you tomorrow on my show. How much fun is that? I do your show, you do my show. It's so much fun.
Awesome.
And it's going to be cool. And you used to always come up to my house back in the day. Started in around early 2000s. I think I started doing it around 2004. And I built a TV studio in my living room, and I invited up all of my friends. Yourself being one of my friends. We've known each other for years.
I remember seeing Steve-O up there. Speaking of Steve-O.
Steve-O, of course, who I love, would come up to the show and be outrageous as Steve-O always is. And we created this sort of really, really fun, free-form television radio hybrid. I called it Webo Vision, but really it was just like a podcast. It was sort of before podcasting really came to be what it is today.
It was streaming too, wasn't it? You could actually watch it live, yeah?
It was streaming, and it was live, and I had cameras everywhere. I had bleachers in my living room. I had so many great guests. Adam Carolla came up and did the show. He actually helped me. I know Adam's a great carpenter.
Oh, right.
He looked at my bleachers that we built recently out of pine, and he gave me some carpentry tips.
Nice.
So it was a fun show. You did it so many times. We always had a great time up here. But it's interesting. We're all going through this tragic crisis right now that is unlike anything that's ever occurred in our lifetime. and people are freaking out, and it's a scary time, and nobody knows what to think.
Yeah.
And I haven't been doing my web show really over the last few years. I've been on the road doing stand-up and traveling around the country and the world telling jokes and having a great time with my fans all over the country. But I thought that I have a lot of the equipment that I had from the show, and my microphones and my cameras and things like that.
It's great.
So I am isolated here at home, and so in order to keep myself occupied, and also to maybe create a forum for my fans on my Instagram and my friends and my followers on Twitter and all of the people that I interact with all the time on social media, I started broadcasting again every day.
It's great.
3 days ago. And it's been very helpful for me, Dr. Drew, because like you said, you and Bert Kreischer, you say suffer from some anxiety. I also feel, a lot of I don't know if I actually clinically have anxiety, but I do. I always need to keep myself occupied. I need to do something.
That's also mood and anxiety are both. That's a symptom of that. Yeah, I'm the same way.
My whole family is like that.
I am totally locked in my house right now. By the way, I am isolated. I'm not going out anymore. I went to the grocery store 2 days ago for the last time for a final trip before I hunker down here. By the way, when I went to the grocery store, I felt like I was in Platoon or something like that. Hill.
Wow.
I brought Lysol disinfectant spray, the travel size.
Nice.
And then when I entered the grocery store, I sprayed down the handle of the grocery cart, wiped it off. I had a hat on. I had glasses. I had a jacket that was something that I didn't need because I plan on burning it when I get home. And I went through. I got all my things that I didn't have in about 20 minutes, and got out of there, ran home. Burned all my clothes, took a shower in Purell, and that's the kind of anxiety I feel. I really am worried about it. I don't want to go out and get it.
Here's what I want you to know. I want you to know that I have deep faith in my peers in the medical system on two fronts. One, whenever you hear about the U.S. healthcare system getting evaluations that are beneath other systems, it never takes into account stuff like this. We are resilient. We get stuff done. We can flex. We can problem solve. We're innovative, and nobody does that better than us. And so that is going to be there's going to be a curve on that's rapidly increasing at the same time as the virus is increasing. So have faith in that. And I appreciate that our governors and our federal government is preparing for the worst case scenario. We're not going to have the worst case scenario, but their job is to prepare for the worst case scenario. And Governor Newsom yesterday went on the air saying that, he wrote a letter to the president saying that 60% of Californians could get the virus. That is the worst case scenario, everybody. Stop quoting that. He was just trying to get resources from the federal government to help him prepare for the worst case scenario. So it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We're not going to let it happen. We're going to get this thing.
My question about that specifically, and I have been very much on top of the news, and I have questions about all of the specific things that we end up talking about today.
Good.
So part of my thinking is that perhaps the worst case scenario is achieved in this country if people disregard any of these self-isolating warnings.
Not happening.
Oh, no, big deal.
Yeah, not happening though.
Flu.
You can see it's not happening.
Out, like in Fort Lauderdale, and they don't want to ruin their spring break, and they're grinding on the beach and pouring margaritas down each other's throats, right? And then all of a sudden, that is the worst case scenario, right? Nobody listened, and everybody gets sick, and so perhaps there is an element of that. The other thing is, though, that, from my understanding, in China, where you look at the numbers and you see there was 80,000 cases of coronavirus, and you think, well, geez, there's 1 billion people in China and only 80,000 cases.
Right.
How is that possible? We're going to have 1 million cases here. Well, the thing that I'm wondering, and the thing that I'm worried about is here in America, in America, we tend to maybe not listen to these rules as much. Like you saw the people in Fort Lauderdale. Everybody. Yeah,
but that was a bunch of screwballs that were in denial that got the message.
But there's screwballs everywhere.
Yeah, but I see no evidence of the screwballs continuing their thing. In fact, the Screwballs now probably in a panic.
I think it's possible, though, that the reason the Screwballs are not continuing their thing is because people like Gavin Newsom come out and say, hey, this is serious. 56% of the population of California could have this. You better stay inside.
Yeah.
And let's lock this down. So that's one thing. The other thing, though, that I'm questioning, and I think this is definitely a question for you, Dr. Drew, because you will know the answer to this.
Okay.
You know, people with pre-existing conditions, of course, are the ones that are most susceptible to dying from this.
Yes.
And in America, you know, we have a lot more pre-existing conditions than they have in China, like diabetes and things like this.
Obesity.
That are very prevalent in our society. So I do think it might be possible that the death rate could be higher here than it is there. And the last thing I wanted to mention, just before I forget, is the testing. You know, they were testing everybody over in South Korea and in China. Everybody was being tested, and because of the massive amount of testing that was being done over there, the numbers were higher. So then people over there were more afraid, and they stayed in. Whereas here, because we've had very limited testing so far in this country, and we can talk about the politics about that off the air, but they've had a very limited amount of testing so far in this country, and because of that, the numbers of diagnosed cases are very low, and it's misleading. They could be 10 times as high as what they are, and people are looking at the numbers and going, how am I only going to get it? There's only 7,000 people in the whole country that have it.
Right.
No, there could be 100,000 people. There could be 1 million people that have it right now.
That's why
I'm running through the grocery store like it's, Full Metal Jacket. You know?
Like Logan's Run. But if you're going to speculate, that's a wild speculation, a factor of 10. I would accept a factor of 2 or 3. That seems more reasonable to me. And if that's true, let's say 3 times the number of people, we're now at 16,000 cases, so we're up approaching 50,000 cases. That's still doing damn well. That's doing pretty good. Now, the question then remains, though, where are we in the curve? Are we having an effect on it? Is it not yet really hit yet? We don't know. It's hard to imagine it's going to inflect badly with everybody at home. I mean, it's hard to imagine. And remember, the testing we've been doing diagnostic testing, right? And some screening testing, but we're not doing universal testing. We're not doing wide-scale screening testing. We're just not doing that. That's not how we're set up right now. Now, someone may decide that we need to do that, or they might just do some pilot studies where they do polling, much like we do with politics. You go out and test people randomly, 1,000, sample of people. I'm sure a lot of people would step right up for that. So these are all questions that the scientists need to answer, Tom. It's not really for you and me. What do they need to fight this thing is the question. And in speaking of innovation, there's a lot going into Plaquenil and hydroxychloroquine today. A lot of people putting faith in that's looking very good. And if that ends up, if we get enough studies out that show that it's as good as it's suspected to be, that's going to change everything. It could change everything.
There's going to be a run on hydrochloroquine like there was a run on toilet paper.
Correct. There will be. And then I think that's why people are being a little quiet about it, because they're trying to ramp up the production before they announce it. That's my suspicion. But to be fair,
the cat's out of the bag now, Dr. Drew.
Well, no, we don't know yet. I'm talking about with a wide scale recommendation. And even at the beginning, it would only be family contacts, healthcare workers, that kind of thing. Not everybody needs to take it. So, Jenna,
isn't it amazing whenever one of these outrageous and tragic things happen in the news, and then all of a sudden, people start talking about things and terms and terminology that we've never used before. Like we're having a conversation right now about hydrochloroquine.
Yeah.
And I actually know how to say it.
Yeah.
And I've heard about this.
Yeah.
And we're talking about hydrochloroquine right now. I've never talked about hydrochloroquine in my life, but now I actually want to go get some.
Get stock in it. You know what? Can I make a little gripe myself, just because I know so much.
But before you do,
you always interrupt me. I have to give my gripe. When they announced yesterday on the news that a 40-year-old passed from the virus, they said, "Oh, now young people can get it," but they forgot to say that he was at risk, in a at-risk category, and that kind of made me mad.
Jen Voy, what are you saying about Dr. Fauci? What does he disagree about? I have to put that out there first. So the deal with the 38-year-old that died yesterday, I'm going to give you my opinion about that one. He had a history of testicular cancer. Now, Tom, help me with this one. I'm gonna reason. I'm speculating wildly, but we have to kind of do this to think about the potential risks associated with this. What would you think? And you're a testicular cancer patient, Tom. Do you worry that you're an at-risk person?
I am a testicular cancer survivor. I know he had that as well in 2016, but he also had asthma and a history of bronchial infections, which is a respiratory. And
right.
This is such a respiratory illness. So I've kind of put my mind at ease, and I've talked to my doctors, and from what I understand, I'm not actually at the higher risk because of my surgery
Correct.
20 years ago.
Correct.
So am I right about that?
You're right about that. You're right about
Okay,
that. And people are saying on Restream, Tom had testicular cancer. They've already forgotten about that, Tom. So I'm sorry about that. That was the biggest news in the country.
The Hey Kids, Feel Your Balls song for that just thing on MTV.
You have to bring it back bring it back on the website. I want you to have that be my lead-in music tomorrow when I do your podcast. But
absolutely, I'll tell you, man. This is a strange thing about life. I moved down to the United States of America from Canada when I was 28 years old. I'd been doing this public access show, running around on the street, making funny videos with my friends. MTV picked it up. In 1999, it turned into this hit show. Everything was crazy. My life changed, and everything could not have been going better. And then right as I was sort of at its zenith, I had to quit the show because I got cancer. And the thing about that is that the reason I'm bringing it up and how it applies to today is, in life, I've had a lot of curveballs thrown at me, as we all have. And this reminds me of that. This pandemic, this coronavirus situation that's going through now reminds me of when I was told I had cancer. It reminds me of 9/11, which was another, horrible tragedy that happened in my lifetime and all of our lifetimes, or many of our lifetimes. And so I just kind of think that, it's strange having to start to get used to learning to deal with these kinds of incredibly tragic and scary things. And you start to say, oh, is this part of life? Is this a normal part of life? Or should we actually be completely terrified right now?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. It's about being resilient and adaptive, right? It is. And I had a similar thing with the prostate cancer, that it'll blast you out of the sky very easily.
So you guys knew about all this guy's conditions.
However you want to contemplate that, whether it's the idea of spirituality or God's doing that, or statistics, or just how life works, however you conceive of it, it just happens. True. Susan, go ahead.
This is where I was kind of going with it, and you mentioned spirituality and whether you're a religious person or not. I think that in times like this, and specifically, geared towards this exact situation that we're in right now as a nation, as a human nation, and as a society, we have to think, okay, how is this going to change us? Obviously, this is tragic and horrible, but is there any good that may come or could come from this horrible situation? What are we going to learn from it?
Right.
And I think to myself, okay, maybe this is going to make us all think a little bit about each other a bit more, have a little more empathy towards one another. When we see homeless people on the streets, we might think, hey, we should look after those people in our society so they don't get sick. And if they get sick, I might get sick. And maybe we should be treating our whole society and making everybody feel healthy and good. Maybe we should be nicer to each other. Maybe we should be nicer to the planet, which is now maybe made to seem so much smaller to some people that might not have ever traveled before and thought, the world is an impossibly big place. There's no way we could possibly affect the climate with our own, exhaust from our cars and et cetera. And then all of a sudden you say, hey, this virus was in China. Where's China? Way over on the other side of the world just a few weeks ago. And now all of a sudden it's here and my friends have it and we're locked up in our house. Maybe the world is a smaller place than I realized it was just a few days ago. And if collectively everybody in the world starts thinking differently about everything, potentially that could end up changing the world in some way that might actually have a positive
I do believe that good things will come out of this, provided that we pull out of this in time. I think if it goes too long, I'm very concerned. Let me go back to this kid, the 38-year-old. So we have a millennial with testicular cancer with bronchial symptoms. Tom, does that make you think about anything else he might be doing to affect his lungs, let's say?
It's possible he's a smoker, I guess. I don't know.
A smoker of what? A testicular cancer patient who's a millennial.
Right. Now, from my understanding, he had the bronchial symptoms before he had testicular cancer.
He had asthma before. He had asthma before, but chronic bronchitis is not part of asthma. Chronic bronchitis is part of weed. And so, I
have no idea. I don't know him. I wouldn't want to.
No, I'm not speculating about it. I don't know him at all. But I'm saying that it's interesting that people may need to pay attention to anything they're smoking. This is what I'm saying. That whether you're smoking tobacco or weed, you may need to be paying attention. That's what this sort of makes me think about. So,
are you suggesting that maybe somebody could get testicular cancer from smoking marijuana?
No, I'm saying
he probably smoked weed because he
had cancer. Yeah, I'm just thinking that's probably what he did, and that's a reasonable thing to do. But it may have worked against his. That we don't know what's going on with we know that tobacco is bad. We know for sure, but we don't know about cannabis, and it made me wonder about that.
Smoking it, it's burning your lungs.
Well, it's interesting. I wouldn't want to speculate about him.
No. Hey, listen, hang on. I'm not speculating about him. It made me think about cannabis, and then I started thinking, wow, that's something we haven't really talked about yet in this country, and maybe we should.
Well, I'll tell you what I would say to that. Okay, so I personally don't smoke marijuana. I never really touched it growing up, before the Tom Green show. People used to always come up to me, they'd say, "Hey, Tom, you must have been really high when you did all that stuff on the show," and they would think I was a big stoner or something like that. And I'm not. I was not. I mean, I didn't even touch the stuff when I was doing the show back in the day. I will say that over the last few years, touring, doing stand-up, I do occasionally have a cigarette, which I'm ashamed to say. But I have. I'm not a smoker.
But I think what
I'm saying is, in the last week, I have stopped that practice. I want my respiratory system to be as cleaned out as possible.
Exactly.
I'm not having my 3 cigarettes a week, because if for any reason I do catch this virus, I want to have clean lungs.
Yes.
And I want to be able to fight.
That is the point. That's the reason I bring it up. Tracy said, I'd imagine smoking anything would affect your lungs. That is my point. We don't know that. We actually don't know that. But it makes, we know that tobacco is bad, and now I'm starting to worry about other stuff. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we just
and I don't smoke weed, so that's. Believe it or not, Tom Green doesn't smoke weed. But
well, I don't care who smokes or doesn't smoke. I care about people surviving this virus, and it's starting to be. We're starting to wonder, could that have something to do with it? Because we know tobacco does. That's for sure.
Let me ask you this also, because I think I know the answer to this. But I'll tell you, and this is. I've decided I'm going to not drink alcohol until this is over either. Because,
Smart.
The other night I was on the phone with a friend and chatting about how outrageous this is and trying to make sense of it all. And I had a couple of glasses of whiskey, as I like to do, Bushmills, by the way, from Belfast, of course, because my grandfather was from Northern Ireland, so I drink the Belfast, the Bushmills now, and not the Jameson. But regardless, I got up in the morning and I felt, like I'd had a few too many glasses of whiskey the night before. And I said to myself, why am I wanting to feel tired? Why am I compromising my immune system right now by drinking alcohol when there's a pandemic going on? Maybe I should try to be healthy. So I'm hydrating a lot. I'm eating healthy. And I'm not drinking alcohol. Would that be something that you would suggest to people?
Yes, that's all the kinds of stuff I'm getting into right now, which is, try to eliminate the things that could make the potential for complications increase. And then we're going to, hopefully have some data soon that these medications are working, which will change everything if that's true. We'll have to see. I mean, again, we need the formal data before we can make that recommendation. And as I said, we don't want to say too much until we know that the supply is ramped up properly too.
Wow.
I'll tell you one thing about the people deciding to stay in, I think is still critical. And I live in the hills and I can see out into the city, and I'm telling you right now, I'm looking at the freeway, and there's a lot of cars on the freeway right now. A lot of cars. I mean, there's less than an average day, but I'm talking thousands of cars going by every minute. These people are going somewhere. So what's that all about?
I guess people going, essential services, I guess. It's kind of weird. I noticed it last night, too, because media has an exemption. And so I was doing a television show last night.
That's so weird.
And I noticed the freeway was kind of full last night compared to the previous night. So
Are podcasts an exemption, too?
They were in the list. But
they were?
Yeah, it's weird.
But I mean,
But I don't know. I mean,
it's not like a room full of people. If somebody's coming over and if they're sick, and if you only get one other person sick. Although we've had 3 people here today, but
yeah.
Well, I'm telling you right now, the freeway is full. It does not look like people are taking heed to the stay-at-home emergency.
That's weird. That's weird to me because
that's sort of what I was talking about earlier, and why I sort of like on my podcast, I have made a conscious choice not to be a doomsday prepper. I don't want to talk about worst case scenarios. I want to be optimistic.
Right.
I want to talk about how we're going to prepare, how we're going to avoid from getting sick. I had a caller called into my show today on my podcast, and he said that him and his friends have been doing this thing the last 24 hours or so since this really kicked in, where they get together in a friend's backyard, but they all stay 6 feet away from each other. And I said to him, hey, that sounds pretty innovative and fun, but I just kind of feel like human beings, we're so social as animals. And if you get together with your friends and you all stand 6 feet away from each other, and then you start having some beers, and then you start having some laughs, and all of a sudden you go, oh, forget about this coronavirus, and you run up and you hug your friend.
Yeah.
And, you're all hanging out. You forgot all about it.
Right.
And then you go home and you just got all your friends sick.
Right, right.
So, what are the rules? What are the rules to really, to really cope with this new reality we're living in right now? What I decided to do is do nothing for 2 weeks until I figure out what's going on, and then then I'll peek my head out of the house.
Right. I think we'll kind of know where we are by the end of next week. We'll know better at least. So I think you can start to. It's better if you stay home. That's obviously the rule of thumb. It's better if you can limit your contact to nothing, of course, right? But
and man, you know what, man? Man, Dr. Drew, I'm calling you man. Dr. Drew, yeah. I have cleaned up my sock drawer for the first time, in a way that
Whoa, slow down now.
Take a picture. I want to see.
I found a sock in my sock drawer from 1997 that I have never worn. Okay, and so it's all neatly organized now. I've been doing closets. I've been dusting. It's amazing. I mean, I tell you, after this is over, you got to come up here. My house is spick and span now. You guys got to come over for dinner, and it's you could eat off the floor up here now.
Done and done. We have to have dinner served on the floor just for that reason.
So
I will literally do that just to prove a point. We will eat off the floor when this is all over.
Somebody on Facebook said, "Hi, Drew. Are edibles the only safe way to take cannabis?"
We don't know about vaping, right? Vaping irritates certain lining of the lung tissue, and so edibles would be the way if you're going to take cannabis. Then I would avoid smoking things, right? And it does not appear that just the ingestion of cannabis has any adverse effect on all this. It would be the smoking that I'm concerned about. Tom, I've got a bunch of things I want to talk about, and I'm getting sort of. One of the things I want to get into is the homeless situation, which Governor Newsom was showing some real leadership and starting to get something done for the homeless. He'd send down 1,000 trailers, and he started mandating movement and into hotels and motels. I thought, oh my God, I'm now a fan of Governor Newsom's. But then Mayor Garcetti said, well, we just need the tents to move 6 feet apart. And I thought, oh my God, oh my God. Not only does the problem is they're immunocompromised because they're ill and living in the streets, and they're not getting medical care and living in the streets, and there's no sanitation, and this being in the streets makes them run down further and makes them likely to pass this thing. We have to do something aggressive and get people, because that's the population that's going to get obliterated by this and will infect other people as it grows as a serious epidemic.
They bring it to the hospitals too.
Oh my God. So what do you have any suggestions?
Well, I sometimes wonder if this continues to grow and become a bigger and bigger and bigger crisis that it's already as big as you could imagine. But if it grows, they've laid off everybody in the restaurant industry. Everyone's, it's the largest drop of unemployment in the history of the United States. Dropped over 2 million people yesterday.
Yep.
This is going to have such a long-lasting impact on our economy. And again, not to talk politics, but perhaps this might be a time where people who were very, very, very much against the universal healthcare system may start to think, hey, you know what? Maybe a universal healthcare system would be good given these unknowns that we're now experiencing, like global pandemics and things like this. And maybe that would be something that would help people like the people we're talking about, homeless people, and maybe a little bit of a more socialized ideas, which is not a bad word to me. I'm from Canada. I mean, I appreciate certain
let's see.
From the government. Maybe I think we could help these homeless people and give them some shelters and build some shelters for them.
Yeah, but this is
give them medication.
Tom, you got the wrong idea here. There has been, I don't know what's happening to this money, but there's billions of dollars to help the homeless. The laws don't allow us to do anything with them. And so the reason
that's what I'm suggesting is we change the laws.
Yeah. The reason it's such a great opportunity is we can sweep aside those laws and actually start to really help people. And that's what the opportunity is here. If Governor Newsom would declare a disaster, not just an emergency, then all the regulation moves aside and we can really help people.
There's homelessness everywhere in this country. I travel everywhere in the country. I performed in every major city in the United States. I've been to every state. I've been to every part of Canada and all around the world. There's more homelessness in the United States than there is in other parts of the world. There's homelessness in Canada as well because of our freedoms. We have the freedom to go live under a bridge. We have the freedom to go do whatever we want, and that's something that we have to balance with the right for everybody in society to have a clean sidewalk and to not be infected by spreading disease and bubonic plague and all of these kinds of things that are coming back that you told me about, right?
Yep.
But so, I just kind of think that maybe there's got to be a little bit more attention paid to what kind of compromise can be made to find a happy medium where these people can be where shelters can be built for people, where they can receive free medicine, and we can start to look after people in our society that don't have the benefits that you and I have, that don't have. There's a lot of people that can't afford, medicine or even lunch. When you hear that, kids they're afraid of closing the schools down because that's where the kids get lunch. I mean, it's just heartbreaking to think that is the reason they're afraid to close the schools, because that's the only place that the kids get lunch. I mean, there's got to be something done that's gonna help everybody in this country, the richest country in the world, which I'm proud to say. I became an American this year.
Hey, congratulations!
I became an American citizen this year, and I've been living here for 20 years, and I love this country. And I want to see the people that I meet when I travel around this country are so genuine and full of positivity and such a great spirit. And then I sometimes just see that it's unfair. There's an unfairness here where there's so much wealth in this country, and then you have people that can't afford to pay for their medicine. They can't afford to go to the doctor. It just seems completely outrageous, and I think that this is maybe time that people really, really start to question that. People that might not have questioned it a week ago, right? Obviously, you have a lot of people that have been talking about this for years, but maybe this is going to put everything in perspective for people that never even imagined wanting to have universal health care.
Well, we'll see which healthcare systems withstands this stress the best. That'll be kind of interesting too. So let's. I want to talk about the panic, because that's something I've been concerned about from the beginning. I was very critical of the press for continuing to use language that incited the panic. Now I spend all my day talking people off the ledge who are in a panic or depressed and having profound reactions to the language that's out there in the press. For instance, yesterday, the press went crazy with Governor Newsom's letter, which was a worst case scenario that he was using to make the case of what he needed from the federal government. And that became the doomsday scenario that the press pumped out, spent the rest of the day helping people deal with the panic associated with that. I am very disturbed and have been from the beginning. I've been saying it from the beginning, one thing and one thing only. Press needs to shut up for the most part, just report the facts and listen to Anthony Fauci, and that's it. That's it. That man has been through many epidemics. He is the man in charge to keep us safe. Do what he tells you, no more, no less, and we'll be fine. But does not seem to be that people that call themselves journalists are feeling that responsibility to the social order. They just don't seem to even care about it. Do you agree?
I think we're living in a time where facts have become debatable, and nobody knows what to believe anymore. And we can argue all day with anybody about how or why that is the case. But we're dealing with a situation where a great many people in this country may look at a press conference of politicians and government people and say, oh, do I believe what that person is saying?
Right.
And so because people maybe don't believe the experts, because they don't believe the media, because nobody knows what to believe, we're dealing with a crisis in a credibility crisis amongst everybody, not just the media, but also, the government.
Yep.
Right? You don't believe what anyone has to say. It just depends on what side of the political spectrum you lie.
Right. That shouldn't be. That shouldn't be. We should be getting together.
If you're a Republican, you're not going to believe the left-wing media. If you're a Democrat, you're not going to believe Donald Trump. And so we have this situation where no one knows what to believe. And right now we're witnessing exactly what is the reason why that's a huge problem, right? Because right now is the moment where we need facts. We need to believe the facts, and we need everybody to know what they're hearing is true.
Yeah.
So even if what Dr. Fauci is saying is completely true, half the people don't believe him because he's standing beside Donald Trump.
Right.
And the other half of the people don't. So this is what I think is the problem.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
You need to pick your, let somebody be your North Star in this. I can tell you that I know Fauci knows his stuff. Maybe you just want to use the CDC website. But you guys, I think, Tom, your point about experts is well taken, but I think experts are being looked at a little more as though a worthwhile, let's put it that way, as though they have something to offer, because people are suddenly now saying, okay, I'm going to listen. They're interested in what they have to say. The problem is that, again, you have, and the right and the left should not be pointing fingers at each other or taking issue with each other. Everybody should be getting together. We have a common enemy. It's time we all got it together and take care of business. And again, that's why I've been flipping out about the press a bit.
I've heard there's been more cooperation between the Republicans and the Democrats since this happened, which I think is important.
Yes, and agreed.
I think that speaking to your listeners right now, and when I'm speaking to my listeners right now, I think it's important that we encourage all people in America and around the world to put some of those traditional differences behind, and let's find our commonality so that we can fight it together. Because if you do start blaming the other side and then you're not listening to what they're saying, and here we have Dr. Fauci up there standing beside Donald Trump, who I know the president. He fired me on the Celebrity Apprentice, right? I know Donald Trump, right? It's an interesting thing, Dr. Drew. We've done these TV shows over the years for years, and I was on the Celebrity Apprentice, and I got fired by the president, and now when I see him on TV all the time, I think, geez, that's my old boss.
That's really funny. That's really funny.
But so it's like, I think it's important that we can't just sort of sit there and sneer at somebody we don't agree with. Let's listen to people that we don't agree with a little bit more, because maybe we'll learn something.
Hey, Lee Dragon, I didn't see the latest press conference. Maybe you can give us a little report on it and what was the issue with it, what was good or bad. Again, what did Fauci tell us? It'd be interesting to see. I heard Fauci was doing some kind of podcast with somebody, and he was concerned about us running out of supplies. And please listen to everyone's language very, very carefully. What I'm sure he was saying was, and I didn't hear the interview, but I know him, and so I suspect what he's going to have said was that if we don't change things, we could run out of supplies and not meet the needs of the moment. Or if things aren't contained in some way, or if we don't come up with good treatments, yeah, it's possible, which is not what we're going to let happen. We're not going to let that happen. And if it were impossible to control this thing, how did South Korea and China do it? They managed to do it.
Yeah.
And we would just follow that model and we will get it done. But your point is well taken, Tom. The cars on the roads make you feel a little bit I don't know, insecure, I guess, right?
Yeah, it does. And, I mean, Americans are
but people have to run
very,
the
very
supermarkets.
proud
people
of our
have to
freedom.
go to work that are
We're very proud
service.
of our freedom.
Yeah.
So,
some
have to go to work.
are allowed. They're allowed.
Yeah, that's our point. But it seemed like too many people on the road to meet just the essential stuff and grocery store visitation. It just seems like it. But that's what we're wondering. Maybe it's all just the essential workers.
What you're saying there, though, when you have people saying, we're allowed to go to work, we're allowed.
Yeah.
They don't say that in China, okay? When the government says don't go to work, people don't go to work.
Right.
And that might be the reason.
This is not communism.
That might be the reason why we have to worry right now a little bit more.
Could be.
Because those numbers of China, we're not China. We're not Chinese. We're America, and we behave differently in the society because of our freedoms that we enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm saying. The other thing, though, just to change the topic for a second.
Sure.
On the same topic of panic, right? Here's the thing that I find fascinating and scary about all of this is, we have the internet now, right? This is out of control. Social media. Everybody is on their internet and they're talking and socializing,
Thank God we have
communicating all day. And it's amazing, and it's the most incredible thing for all of us. But information just gets so kind of confusing for everybody, like the way I just talked about, but also in other specific ways right now with what we're going through. The amount of conspiracy theories and calls that I'm getting from all of my friends every day saying this, that, or the other thing. I heard this is an attempt to hide the fact that we're in the midst of a global economic collapse. Look at all of these CEOs of these major corporations all resigned exactly 2 weeks ago. This is martial law. This is the beginning of World War III. This is this, that, or the other thing. And it can really make you really get really nervous.
Right.
Because when you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, yeah, this is unprecedented. This has never happened before. I've never been told before that I have to lock myself in my house for 18 months. That sounds kind of like World War III or something is about to start.
Yeah. Also, I don't like the language of shelter in place. That's for an active shooter. Barricade yourself is what that means. And so let's soften our language so we at least don't all go into imaginary scenarios. Yeah, if this goes for many, many months, you don't know how it's going to play out. You don't. I understand that. And that unknown is what's got. So the virus is an unknown. Where we are on the curve is an unknown. What's going to happen if this goes on too long is an unknown. I get that scary stuff. So you got to kind of stay in the here and now. You really do.
So that's my question to you is how do I not let all of this information coming at me from so many different directions affect my psyche, affect my peace of mind, and make me make the wrong choice? You see a run on people buying guns. You see all these things that people, the hoarding of all the food because they think that they're not going to be able to get toilet paper ever again.
Right.
And how do we control our feelings when all of this scary information is coming out?
One thing is, and this is what I've been chanting about for 5 weeks, is ignore press and social media that makes you go down that path. I know it's a temptation to scratch that itch, but if you really get off that media, particularly television, they will stop because their ratings will go through the toilet.
That's true.
And they will stop that nonsense. I'm hearing that, for instance, Chris Cuomo, is that his first name, over at CNN, the morning show anchor, is being very, very positive about the message he's putting out. And I'd say, go watch that show. Watch his morning show and his nighttime show too. Get behind people that are giving positive messages and are addressing the worst case scenarios, not addressing them, but dressing them down really, and showing what the real potential is for positive outcome and where we might be in reality rather than where we could be if the world came to an end, which is very unlikely. We're going to stay with the people that are, I'm not saying keep your head in the sand, and I'm not saying only back people who are giving you some sort of rose-colored glasses point of view. I'm saying when the papers, when the print, when the websites, when the television shows constantly pump the worst case scenarios and tell stories that are maudlin and it just upsetting at a time like this, don't back them. Run away. You walk with your feet, with your phone, with your remote control, whatever it is. go somewhere else and try to gather with people that are really interested in solving the problem and getting through this. I mean, that's the kind of attitude we need right now. Not, words like soaring and catastrophe and shelter in place. No, that is causing the problem. We don't know where we are. We might be in better shape than we think. That's also a possibility here. We might be in a lot better shape than we think.
Yeah, I pray that's true. I hope that's true. The other thing is these telephones, these cell phones that we all have glued to us at 24 hours a day. Everybody has it. My mom's on her phone now all the time. I mean, my people that they didn't used to have a cell phone, now they're on it all the time. I'm on it all the time, and everybody's on it all the time. So even if you do make an effort to turn off the news or to stop reading, websites that are getting you freaked out, everybody else is, and then they're texting you. Yeah. And I tell you, in the last 2 or 3 days, I get texts from all of my friends linking news stories to me, or linking videos, and here's a graph of the pandemic and how fast it's growing, or here's what's happening with the military right now. The troops are moving in this direction. You start reading, what is this going on? And here's what's happening with the international banking system. Here's what's happening with the stock market, and so many other things that are very, very scary. Mm-hmm. And you end up getting on the phone with your friends, and you end up having conversations kind of like the one we're having right now, except you're not on the radio. You're not having it publicly. So people go really down the rabbit hole. Yeah. People that you trust, people that you trust, people that you value their opinion, and all of a sudden they're taking you down the rabbit hole where you think that you're going to have a bug out bag with a week's supply of food to be able to run from your home at any time and drive out into the desert.
It's
shooting
crazy.
Your way through it like you're in the wild west. I mean, it really gets you freaked out. So and trust me, man, I got enough granola bars to keep me going for a while if I have to make a run for the hills. Let's put it that way.
We have a lot of dog food if you need it. It's actually people food too.
It's like Mad Max, right? Remember you ate the dog food in Mad Max? It's come to that. A great tin of Dr. Ballard's will really be a real treat in a few months from now.
Oh, God.
Felix asks, when do we panic? There's no point at which panic is going to be helpful. There's no point in all of this. It's about staying in the moment, rebuild, solution oriented. Follow the directions that we're all being asked to follow. Stay in a collective. I mean, I think that's the main thing. I guess we panic if we all fall apart. For me, if we stop getting this together, when a governor or a mayor says to do something, it's up to all of us as good citizens to follow our leaders. And if we do, and again, I tell you, if they're doing more than Fauci wants you to do, you're going to be fine, because he is setting the standard after which we're going to be fine.
Is it true they're going to send...
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Is it true that they're going to send $1,500 to every American?
Yeah, it's looking like that.
Even you?
Yeah, and I think if somebody who doesn't need it either ought to have a way to give it to a charity, or
just take it off your
Social
Security.
You can give it to me. I'll take your $1,500.
Yeah. or charity or something where we can make a difference with it, or just turn it down so the people that really need it should be for people that really need it. If they don't have a sense that they really need it, they shouldn't take it. That's my humble opinion on this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We are at 18,000 cases now on one website, and then we are at the Johns Hopkins map, we are at 16,000. I've said all along, if we're under 20,000 by today, we're okay. We're doing pretty good. And if we're under 60,000 by the end of next week, we're doing very well. Very well. But the next 3 or 4 days will tell, because we don't know how much of... We've had a little surge since yesterday, and we don't know how much of that surge is from the increased testing, or if it's really the attack rate, really a sense that we're starting to spread a little bit. It's very hard to tell.
Well, within 2 or 3 weeks, we're really going to know. The thing that really worries me about it is exponentially, when you talk about exponential growth,
right?
I've heard varying statistics about that one person who is infected will infect up to 100 people. I've heard.
So, I mean... That's how one person gives it to 2, gives it to 4, gives it to but that won't happen because we're not interacting with each other. That can't happen.
Well, I'm looking at the freeway. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
If people are giving it to each other because they don't believe that it's a problem, what I worry about is that within a month we're going to see a drastic amount of numbers changing, which I hope doesn't happen. I pray it doesn't happen. But because let's say it is doubling every day, or let's say it's going up every day. We don't know that right away because these people are walking around. They're getting it. They contract the virus. Now they're asymptomatic. Let me use a real word there. That probably makes sense.
Yeah.
They're asymptomatic. They don't show any symptoms. They're walking around. Now they're infecting 10 people. And then those 10 people are walking around. They're infecting 10 people, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah,
like
if they're allowed to make those,
right?
yes, if they can make that contact, yes. But that's why we're staying home.
And nobody's getting tested. And then all of a sudden, one day, a month down the road, it explodes, right? So,
yeah, but you're now going into worst case scenarios, right? This is what
that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. That's what
absolutely.
That's why we're doing. Yeah.
It's okay, Tom. Yeah. You're gonna be okay. Somebody said they cut it off at night.
I mean, I hope so. The fact is, we don't know that, though. We don't know that I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't.
We don't know.
But that's why we don't need to.
That's the problem,
But that's why the panic doesn't help. The panic doesn't help, and speculate.
So I'm wondering, like, how do you find the line? How do you find the line between healthy amount of fear and full on screaming, running, pulling your hair out, panic? Because I think if people are complacent, I think I heard somebody use the word complacency.
Yeah. I have not met a complacent person in about a week. So of any stripe. So
right, but you see them online. You see those kids in Fort Lauderdale. Hey, dude, we don't want to ruin our party, bro.
It's not right.
We've been planning our spring break for 2 months, man. We're not going to let some virus set us back.
Well,
that guy was complacent, man. That guy was complacent.
That was a good example of anosognosia. It's commonly known as denial. And my understanding is all that has been completely clamped down. And the good news is they have very few cases in Florida, so that probably didn't cause too much by the couple days those guys were doing that, though they all went home to their home states, and who knows what happened there.
Well, they're young, whatever. Okay, so somebody answered our question. I think you don't get $1,500 if you make over $99,000 a year.
I heard 198,000 combined. 198,000 in the household. Yeah. So, but how do they determine that? I guess that had been the last tax
year?
Tax period or something. That's the question. This year, people are going to zero.
This is the year you have to look at.
I know a lot of people are going to zero. So I think they're assuming that people that made that kind of money saved some money, and they should be okay as compared to somebody who has no savings.
I'm not looking forward to a check. I don't think it's going to happen.
You hear my dog panting? Can you hear that over there?
Yeah, he went to the market with Jordan. Jordan came out of his
that's why he's so happy.
Bunker and went to the market.
Okay, good. All right, you guys, we've been going about an hour now. Tom, I'll join you tomorrow on your podcast.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you guys being here at the streaming shows. Oh, Sean is saying in Orange County at the grocery store there was not a lot of social distancing. Yeah. You got to, which is an interesting thing. You got to pay attention. You got to concentrate when you're around people. Well, that was Tom's point. We had a couple beers in, you start slapping your friend on the back and or hugging somebody, and that is not social
if you're not
distancing.
Sick and doesn't seem like people are coughing and sneezing. Can't you? I mean, it's hard to. If somebody sneezes, everybody's gonna disperse. Obviously, if I sneeze in the house, everybody disperses. It's just.
It's interesting. We're living in a time right now where if somebody sneezes, it's like someone just threw a grenade.
That's exactly right. Or coughs a little bit.
The look on people's faces when somebody sneezes and the scattering, exactly like you just said. I have a theory about the toilet paper too, and the reason there was everyone saying why was there this run on toilet paper? How strange there was this run on toilet paper. I think what kind of happened here is. It's not just that there was initially was not a run on toilet paper as much as there was a run on everything else.
Yeah.
But because toilet paper is so big, it takes up a lot of shelf space. So it's actually misleading how how much toilet paper is in the grocery store. It has a whole aisle dedicated to it, but there's far less there than you would think.
Interesting.
So what happened was it wasn't people hoarding toilet paper right away. It was just everybody went to the grocery store and everybody bought toilet paper. Well, when everybody buys toilet paper all at once, even if they're not hoarding it, it's gone. So then within the first day, all the toilet paper was gone because there wasn't enough space. But, it doesn't take up a lot of space. It was all gone. So now that it was all gone, it immediately went online and said, you need toilet paper. You need to get toilet paper. And so then that compounded the problem. Everybody's on this mad rush for toilet paper. And now, you know what? I'm out of toilet paper. I've been using palm fronds and I've been out in the backyard, jumping in the pool every morning just to clean up,
Something.
Buy a bidet, Tom.
I got to say, somebody's got to help me.
Dr. Oz said to use your hand.
Yes, he did.
Well, I won't be shaking Dr. Oz's hand even after this thing dies down.
I think I'd be cautious. I'm looking at the Hopkins website, and something has happened as it pertains to the reporting on France, which was way up into the thousands yesterday, and now it's down. And I don't know what is going on there, because France, I'm imagining France was one of the countries that I thought was going to really suffer. They were not ready for this, and they clamped it down pretty hard. But I think they may. I don't know what to make of that. So if anybody can tell me what's going on in France, I'd be interested to know.
I wondered if because in France everybody kisses on the cheek when they meet each other and things like that.
Yeah.
If that could be something. I've also thought that is it possible that in LA maybe we maybe because everybody stays in their car and doesn't talk to each other, that could help us out here.
Yeah.
So.
And they also have more bidets per capita.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure they do. I mean,
so they don't have to worry about toilet paper.
Word, I'm pretty sure bidet is a French word. Yeah.
Less spreading of the disease.
Yeah. All right. So here's the deal.
You.
I'm optimistic. I am optimistic. I feel like I have faith in the medical system. I have faith in my peers. I have faith in the researchers. I feel like we're going to have some good data on Plaquenil soon. I have faith in Anthony Fauci, and he's my North Star, and he should be yours. And the measures he is advocating, that's all we have to do. And we should not be listening to the press. We should not be listening to the overblown language. I've noticed one other thing, Tom, that friends of mine that are
you are a member of the press. You are a member of the press.
I know, and I'm trying to fight back from within. But I've noticed that mathematicians are the most pessimistic, and biologists, people that actually work clinically, are the most cautious but the most optimistic. So it's really interesting that mathematicians are the ones that are spiraling. Are you more of a math brain, or have you ever had any real biological training?
Well, I'm not a math brain. I can hardly even subtract, you know what I mean? But, as soon as they introduced long division into it, I was checked out. And then when they brought algebra in and they started saying, there's letters involved now? I didn't, it's like, X plus Y. I mean, how am I supposed to divide a letter? It's a letter. It's not even a number.
You were out. Okay. Forget what I said about math. But anyway, so.
Biology, though, I can tell you, I know what a paramecium is.
All right, good.
Cilia on it. It's a single-celled organism.
Well done.
Vacuoles and nucleuses and amoebas, and I could talk about the aortic valve and the femur and the tibia.
Good.
The tibia. Yeah, I paid attention in biology, that's for sure.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you for being here, and just made that observation about biologists versus.
Christine on YouTube said she needs to go make cheese sandwiches. She goes, "Are they done yet? I have to go make sandwiches."
All right, go make your cheese sandwiches. Sounds good. Tom, I'll talk to you tomorrow. You set the time, and I'll be there.
Wait, before you go, mention what we're doing Sunday.
Sunday, we're going to be with Mr. Adam Carolla. He and Steve-O's going to call in. Steve-O has some questions for him and me.
I've been trying to get Steve-O for a long time.
Yeah, and so we'll get Steve-O and Tom and Adam, and we will.
This will be a phone call show, so you can actually call in.
Yes, you can call in. I'm guessing Corona will be on as part of what we're talking about, but we're going to try to talk about other things also.
Well, we'll probably have Steve-O on first, and then we'll open up the phone lines, because I love the way Tom set up the sound today with the FaceTime. Yeah. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, FaceTime audio, yeah.
Yes,
please say hello to Steve-O and to Adam for me. I see them down at the Comedy Store all the time doing stand-up and killing it. It's they're legendary. So
Yeah.
I can't wait
Adam
to tune
is
in and hear
not an
those
easy
shows.
book. Let me tell you.
Yeah, Adam. It took a epidemic and a complete lockdown to get Adam onto a show.
And I accidentally texted him at 7:30 in the morning, and Drew gave me some trouble for that.
I said, "You can't text him at 6 o'clock in the morning, whatever this is." She was like, "Oh, I forgot."
Well, it's amazing, because of you and Adam Carolla doing your show Loveline on MTV is essentially the reason why our former friend and manager Howard Lapidus was able to discover me in Canada and bring my show and get my show on
That's
MTV.
true.
I'll never forget when he found you. He called me and said, "Wait till you see this guy." And I was like, "What? He does what? Bum song? What?"
Absolutely.
Somebody wanted to know who you were. And I said you were from Freddie Got Fingered.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I love Howard, and we love Howard so much. We still love Howard, and rest in peace. And I can only imagine what he'd be thinking if he saw what the hell was going on right now.
He would have, whatever it is, it's hard to anticipate what it might have been. But it would not be the routine take, I'm sure. And it would have probably reassured us. He probably would have had something that calmed us down, I suspect.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Thanks
Good to talk to you.
Howard, we miss him.
Stay well, and thank you all for calling. Thank you to our Blue Mike folks again, bluemike.com. And we will see you tomorrow, hopefully with Bob Forrest. That's what we're trying to work on. Bob called me today. He's got a million questions. We'll try to get Bob Forrest from Celebrity.
Let's talk about recovery and
Celebrity Rehab in here.
And everybody listening, go say hi to me right now on Instagram. I'll go check the comments under my last post right now. I want to say hi to everybody.
Done and done, my friend. Good for you, man. Talk soon.
All right.
And we'll see you.
Thanks, Dr. Drew.
All right,
Thanks,
buddy.
Guys.
And we'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.